on Play Chess and streaming to YouTube. Welcome to another kingscrusher radio show. So this radio show usually about 9:05 actually, not really 9. So 9:05. I'll aim for to start on Tuesday. So this week we'll carry on looking at Tradewise Gibraltar. The two very interesting players I identified last week, well, they all also happen to be two of the highest rated players in the tournament, ended up winning the Gibraltar tournament, namely Nakamura and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So let's have a look at some other interesting games that they played there. Now, one of Nakamura's games was absolutely razor sharp against Abhijeet Gupta, who I believe I've seen actually in the FIDE Open. He mopped up one year the FIDE Open in London, so a very, very strong player. Let's see what happened. So this was in round 9. Just some bio actually, just let's get a little bit of bio on Abhijeet Gupta. He's 26-year-old Indian Grandmaster. Actually, there's quite a lot of bio there, which I'm not really sure how to say. He earned the IM title in 2005 at age 15, at the time the youngest IM in India, and the GM title at 18, after earning his third GM norm at the 2007 Malaga International Open. He has won 14 international medals, including 6 gold medals from the Asian, Commonwealth and British Championship age group categories. Alright, so yeah, let's see what happened between them. So we see d4 from Hikaru. I'm going to add a Kb6 here. Hikaru, Nakamura playing white. I'm going to add a Kb6 if I can. Just for it will do. Okay, we see knight f6 and c4 g6, and now this is I think you play this if you are playing someone who plays the Grunfeld and you want to try and maybe sidestep quite a lot of Grunfeld opening theory. So it's a very, very interesting move now. f3. And in some ways it's discouraging d5 from black, because surely white can just take and play e4 and there's no structural damage. But black plays quite often d5 anyway, not minding this position. We have c takes, knight takes, e4, knight b6. And quite often knight c3 is actually played here. But bishop e3 a little bit, not as popular as knight c3. So there's a little nuance perhaps in the move order here Nakamura's chosen. We're talking 20 games for that. I just want to just quickly check that nuance out. Well, it just transposes quite often anyway. Maybe it's not a big deal. Bishop e3, bishop g7. So knight c3, black castles. Queen d2. And it looks incredibly straightforward from one perspective, this position, as though white's treating it as though black's played a Sicilian dragon, is just going to castle queenside, and later some sort of attack like this, get rid of the bishop, and some sort of hack attack. But there's some key things about this position. Is white's king going to be that safe on the queen side? And what if black strikes quite quickly in the center? Black actually did do that with e5. So encouraging white to play d5. Now we have c6. So does it look a little bit scary to castle queenside in this position? In fact, castling queenside wasn't played here. White just got on with a seemingly interesting attacking move now. So h4 was played. Keeping d5 for the moment, it can be kept. C takes, e takes, knight 8 to d7. But the knight isn't in time to stop h5, so h5 is actually played. Knight f6, h takes g, f takes g is played. So black is potentially weakening this diagonal, but the thing is about this position, the knight holds c4, so is the bishop actually ever going to get on this diagonal here? So in some ways then surely that's actually quite a good choice from black to play f takes g6. Let's just check this position for a moment. It's the usual move actually in live, but 32 games. If h takes bishop h6, this could be quite dangerous for black, this position here, even if black takes that pawn, for example. This is looking too scary. White doesn't have to castle queenside. Just play this. It looks a little bit scary for black, this kind of stuff where the king's getting kicked around, so that's kind of avoided anyway. So with f takes g6, so that seems to be a very good idea, and it's the most popular way of playing the position. White does castle queenside now. And here we see actually queen d6, which does mean rook d8 is going to put even more pressure on d5, and white's not in the position, it seems, to support easily the d5 pawn here. Not only that, doesn't this look a little bit dangerous for bishop f5 and rook c8, because this would keep the king on c1. The king escapes here with king b1 while it still can. You might think, hold on a sec then, if that's really a concern, wasn't bishop f5 possible? Actually g4 here kicks the bishop back. Then white could maybe castle queenside soon. I mean, sorry, not castle queenside, play king b1 here. So okay, not a big deal, but okay, queen d6, king b1 check, here rook ac8. It still seems as though black looks to be fully mobilized. I mean, black's got all the pieces in kind of aggressive squares. Not only that, if you look, you know, white's got two pieces just haven't moved yet. But we get another pawn move here, believe it or not. The bishop is kicked from f5, and this may be one of the strongest moves in the position. g4 is played. Now if the bishop humbly goes back, this is a key thing, key position. Can the bishop just go back here? Maybe it should have gone back. Actually, that wasn't what black played here. It's quite a surprising move. G4 is aggressive in the sense there's also things like queen h2 as well coming up potentially, and then that looks dangerous for things like knight e4, and that would be with tempo on the queen and the knight. So this could get very scary actually for the black king, even though black seems to have fully mobilized pieces. But there's a very interesting move that was played here in this position. Can you guess? Black to play. Can you see what black actually played? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. So, a very aggressive looking move, and in some ways seems quite logical and justified. Note also the king looks to be on potentially dangerous diagonal. Isn't that bishop just pointing straight at the king here? Potentially. So black to play, what would you play in this position? All right, it's interesting because okay, if bishop d7, then actually white could end up better, it seems, from an engine point of view. Knight e4 with tempo. So this is like two tempo gains, kicking the bishop, kicking a knight, kicking a queen now. 3 tempo gains. This position ends up being actually very pleasant for white. Bishop c5, then d6. White is a little bit better according to the engine here. So even though black was like seemingly fully mobilized, this position maybe doesn't seem too great. Instead, black played rook takes c3, which does seem to have a great deal of logic behind it in many respects. Is white really in a position to have good king safety here? Queen takes c3 is played. We have rook c8. And it does seem scary to play queen d2. Funny enough, this is the top engine move, seemingly inviting rook c2. In fact, in the game, queen e1 was played. If queen d2, rook c2, for some reason this is preferred by the engines, frets, this position, queen e1. Why is this? Let's see, this bishop moves back, bishop d3. It's just going to be victimized, the rook, I guess. This is okay. Alright. So anyway, but Nakamura went all the way back to e1 without encouraging rook c2. We have bishop c2 now. Rook c1, and the very logical looking move e4. And I say that because like the bishop seems to be liberated across this very dangerous diagonal. Now, okay, there's a few things about this. I mean, d5 is also loose here. Let's imagine white plays f takes e4. That's not particularly good. Knight f takes d5. This wasn't played, but I think intuitively there's a sense of danger. Let's just see if we can demonstrate that. This position, e takes, bang, bishop takes b2 check. This is actually a fourth mate line. Knight a4 check, queen f6 check. And I thought it looked intuitively dangerous, and this kind of line exposes how dangerous white could end up getting mated if he's not careful. But yeah, white doesn't have to do that. This dangerous bishop is immediately parried with bishop d4. So what has black got in this position after bishop d4? Very interesting. Well, black has that d5 pawn to take. He actually takes it here. Queen takes d5. And what to do with the bishop? If it's, I don't think it can be defended. We just take here, and then what? Yeah, no, it has to be moved back. Still parrying this diagonal. Very dangerous diagonal, but it's parried, it seems. What has black got in this position? Black plays now bishop d3. If black plays e takes f3, it seems white's got, white can actually just take on c2, or even knight takes f3 here. And if takes, this is immune because there's a check here winning the queen. So even that's possible actually. But black played bishop d3. Yes, Nakamura is the exchange up. Is there another exchange sacrifice on the way or something? To try and get through this diagonal. Well, we see the move knight h3 in this position, and unless black's got something concrete, there's going to be things like knight f4 soon, and taking here. Maybe this, if the queen's not on e6, this check is going to be dangerous. We see knight a4. That again seems a very logical move, but is it in time here? Knight f4 hitting the queen. Well, it's a fork actually. Queen d6. And now cool as a cucumber, knight takes d3. After e takes d3, there's a tactical point here. about the e6 square. If only the queen could be lured away from e6. Can you see what Nakamura played in this position? White to play. So it's not all one-way traffic yet. This diagonal hasn't been pierced yet. It's a lot to do with timing, this position, it seems. So white playing this position. It looked a little bit scarier before. Now that this bishop's there, it seems find something concrete, but it's white to play in this position. That's the key thing. If it was black to play, fine. It's white to play. What does Nakamura do? Yeah, bishop takes d3 is played, trying to lure the queen away from e6. There's this check, for example. Let's just check that out. Black played queen b6. If he takes here, queen e6 check. It's all running with check actually. And if here there's bishop b4 check, that's actually a mate in 5. Black will be being mated in 5 soon. Whoops, not that diagonal. This is actually mating black. Yeah, that's pretty horrible. And if here, then the rook is dropping off, and this is actually a mate as well in 8. Bishop takes g7, queen c7 check. This is actually a false mate in 6 now. Yeah, you can see the black king's getting kicked around like football. So it's going to be mating black there. So actually, yeah, queen takes d3 is impossible. And white is actually also threatening now. Bishop takes f6, hitting again that poor rook. White's threatening that. Queen b6 was played. So it's interesting to consider the options here. If bishop takes f6, that wasn't played. That's still okay. That's good for white, this position apparently. It looks a little bit scary on b2, but with rook h2, white is actually technically, apparently, okay there, doing well. But no, even I think this is actually this is a very strong move that was played, but there's other strong moves as well. It seems bishop e5 is very good, but also this other move that was played, bishop c2, actually encouraging black to take on c3, it seems. Black here at move 27 resigned. Yeah, black resigned here. He is the exchange down, but let's explore a few things. What if he did another exchange sack? You know, what if black played rook takes c3? It seems the best move is bishop takes a4 here, and this position isn't very good for black. Bishop b3 check is coming to shield the b pawn. What else? So yeah, bishop c2. If knight takes c3, bishop b3 check. Okay, rook takes c3 with tempo. And again, if something like rook takes c3, queen takes here, what is black threatening really? If black does something like this, queen c4, black's king is not safe. What is black actually threatening here? We've got a check here as well to factor in. Nothing. Yeah, it seems bishop c2 is pretty bad in these lines. It seems as though black's just attack is not basically sound. So yeah, after bishop c2, black resigned. I found personally the game slightly strange and scary for white after the exchange sack. It seems the principle of opening up the diagonal with the exchange sack seemed really more attractive than the reality of what happened in the game. It just seems black had some weaknesses around his king basically, and it wasn't all one-way traffic. On knight takes c3, yeah, it's important to play bishop b3 check, because if something like this, then black would be doing fantastically by opening up the diagonal. That would be fantastic. And if here rook takes b3 and we get a slaughter scenario, white would be actually being slaughtered here because of this diagonal. But it's just never allowed to appear. This diagonal is never allowed to be that dangerous, because check here saves the day. It's the light. It seems to be, in a way, the light square weaknesses around black's king, which saves white from any mortal danger. This position is just nothing. I don't know how many of you are surprised at this game. It's a little bit of a strange thing, because it was as if Nakamura was on a defensive against some onslaught, some prepared onslaught. I think a lot of it, apparently, I think I heard it was quite a bit of preparation, but it just didn't seem to, it didn't pierce through the diagonal. So it turns out to be a cute defensive game. Question or comment by the Antonio Varela on stream talks about knight h3, key defensive move. Yeah, let's have a quick rewind, because it's a little bit surprising, this stuff. Knight h3 as a key defensive move. So g4, we had this position coming up with knight h3 here. Let's have a look here. If white hadn't played knight h3, the engine is also suggesting rook d1 should be okay. That looks a little bit scary. Again, rook d1 for this exchange sack, another exchange sack. But this position, is it that clear? Say here, we've got this. We've always got resources with white. But disregarding that, what if, say like this, then there's e takes f3. And black is nearly okay, but knight h3 is one of the better moves. So coming to this f4 to fork. Yeah. It turns out white seems to have been okay throughout the apparent onslaught. So yeah, what can we say? It's an interesting defensive game. Okay, let's have a look at another game. I don't know what you want. What's really to take away from this? Precise defensive calculation. It's an example of precise defensive play, I guess. Now, a different game. Interestingly, okay, so this game was in round 10 against David Anton Gajara. I'm not sure I've got pronunciation there. David Anton Gajara is a Spanish 20-year-old. So Anton became a FIDE master in 2009 and IM in 2012. In 2013 he got the GM title. In 2014 he came second at the European Individual Championship with 8 out of 11. So fantastic year in 2014. Okay, so let's see what happened here. d4, and black was in great fighting spirit. Yeah, sorry, a question about, was the exchange sack faded because of the light squares? Yeah, white was really resourceful, and it seemed the light squares had a lot to do with that defensive achievement. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go on to this game. So I find it interesting that players, well, Bellin is a Dutch defense specialist. We saw a game in the Dutch defense last week with Bellin, but you'd expect him, I think he's got a book out on the Dutch. He's a Dutch defense expert. But another player, believe it or not, I don't know, maybe they should be given bravery awards or something. Another player, David Anton Gajara, also played the Dutch defense against Nakamura. I thought this was incredible. I didn't know the Dutch was that popular. But as a fighting weapon, okay, let's see what happens. So we get an interesting opening. c4, knight f6, we see knight c3, d6, and quite often knight f3 is played here. We see bishop g5, knight bd7, queen c2, looking at that pawn, g6, that's the usual move, and quite often e4 is played here. 36 games. Nakamura chose h4 actually. Let's have a look just quickly at the main line. e4, if this had been played, what does black actually get? It looks like it looks like an interesting position, this position. Engine has it only slightly better for white, but it looks as though black's got active pieces and stuff. So anyway, Nakamura disregarded, it seems, the main move e4 in exchange for this flank move h4. Okay, so we have bishop g7, white castles queenside. And yes, I'm showing you another opposite side castling game. Yes, with Nakamura being white. Is he going to also sneak his king to the corner in this one? c6. He does play the move knight h3 like the other game. Knight h3. There does seem to be this bishop just sitting there like the other game as well on f1 for the moment. Knight f8. So black is not in a rush to go castling here. In fact, knight f8 might be one of the better moves, it seems. If castles knight f4, white's immediately threatening knight e6, winning the exchange. And then if black tried to parry that, it seems white's having a great time here after e3 with things like c5 on the cards. This is dangerous. Black can never do e5 because it's got this rook there. We can just take there. So this is dangerous for things like c5 coming up, or queen b3. And if king h8, this is just too dangerous, this position, it seems. Basically, you know, with h5 coming up, black doesn't want to commit to this sort of position. It looks like white's in an ideal place to just zap the black king. So yeah, black does seem to play very sensible looking knight f8 in the circumstance here. Move 8. We have e3, queen a5, king b1. So we do get king b1, knight e6, bishop e2, and black prepares to castle queenside as well. So it's not going to be an opposite side castling game. Now Nakamura gave up his dark square bishop. Bishop takes f6, and that is often, I've noticed, it's often used as a preliminary to putting more pressure on dark squares. When you give up the dark square bishop, often it's a preliminary, and here it is definitely, because g4 putting more pressure on that light square. So a very aggressive move. Black probably dare not take this. This is just helping white surely. Bishop takes g4. This position is helping white. It looks very nice for white. Black castled here. We have g takes, and now putting more pressure on the light square f5. And black though is hitting h4, right? So he actually just took the king a bit safer. If bishop takes f5 here, I think we just played. Actually, no, there's a little trap here. Naughty. Pardon me. It's not about h4 at all. Pardon me. Yeah, if king b8, can you see actually why? Yeah, tactical test. Why this would be? This wasn't played actually. Yeah. In the game, knight e2 was played here. If bishop takes f5, can you see what black can play? Black to play here. This didn't happen. Black to play here. What would you play with black? Which actually makes king b8 even more sensible and amazing. This would be a nasty pitfall to take on f5 because the power of forcing moves. Black has what in this position? which demonstrates the brutality of forcing moves. The immense brutality, in fact, of certain forcing moves in certain positions, in certain configurations. Knight takes d4, and you'll note that bishop takes d7 is not checked because the king has just gone over there. We're hitting queen and bishop. We've also got the queen hitting the bishop, and if e takes, we run into a nice skewer. Well, not so nice for Nakamura. Nice skewer, winning the exchange. Black doesn't even have to take immediately. He can do better than that. He can actually just take on d4, and it will be all over in this position. It'll be horrible. That's terrible. It'll be a disaster. So yeah, safety point. Shouldn't take on f5 here. White plays knight e2, and that is reinforcing the d4 square, which means actually bishop takes f5, knight takes d4, there's knight takes d4. So bishop takes f5 is actually on the cards. Now we have bishop takes h4, bishop takes f5. So we do have that exchange of weaknesses or prisoners, as Nh3 has mentioned in my system. So okay, what's going on here? Bishop f6. We have white expanding in the center now as well with e4. c5. Black is encouraging white forward in exchange for some dark square weaknesses. But what about black's light square weaknesses here? Bishop takes d7, exchanging off the light square defender. And now f4 is played. And it looks as though e5 is the kind of thematic move you'd want to try and get working somehow. Black played actually rook hd8 here. Let's have a quick look at this position. If rook hd8 wasn't played, say this, e5, what's going on here? Takes, takes, takes. There's queen f5. So that does actually work in this position. So black's move actually safeguards the d7 loose piece in a way. Well, it does with rook hd8. So e5 is no longer a problem, it seems. We have knight f2, which does actually threaten this poor pawn, isolated backward pawn on h7. So that does seem to be white's major trump card at the moment. That h7 is looking very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. How does black actually defend that poor pawn? If he played actually a very aggressive move b5, as though there's some focal point on b2. You know, maybe this is going to switch over one day. It's going to all be rosy. If black tries to defend h7 with say e6, then this is good. Apparently bishop g7. We've even got things like this. Yeah, this looks a little bit bad for black. Yeah, this horrible. It's horrible. So that it's not just the h7, it's this entry point as well. Right in front of that pawn, h6 can be dangerous, it seems. So e6, yeah, that wouldn't be helping. e5, there's knight g4. Again, we've got this entry point right in front of the pawn, which helps. And if something like here, we can take that. And what is black doing here? If this is starting to get scary as well. White plays on the light squares, very nice. Rook e6, knight f5 coming. Okay, so yeah, we see this energetic move, just neglecting the pawn. If the rook went back, just for completeness, we've got e5 here again, with this idea, for example, of queen f5. No. So yeah, black is going for the counter-attack. He plays b5. b5. Yeah, there's a little bit of a similarity actually to the Gupta game, because it's as if black is playing again on b2, and white does have the advantage somehow tactically and positionally on the light squares. Okay, so we have knight g4 hitting the bishop. Bishop drops back here. He wants to maintain that nice bishop, eyeing b2, but he's dropping h7. That is actually taken. And if white's given another move, maybe he will just double rooks against the bishop to snap it off the board. Black played here queen b4. So okay, what is this about? Well, it looks to be attacking like the center and stuff. If here this wasn't played, then it's okay for white in this position even after that. But white played knight e3, just protecting c4 a bit more. Also e5 might even be possible, but knight e3 was played, simply safeguarding, it seems, c4 a bit more. And okay, you might wonder about this thing I mentioned, that couldn't black try and get a rook to b7? The thing is about that, it seems a little bit slow. If b takes, knight takes, say we try this here, there's a3, and actually the queen is trapped as an example. It's not that easy to get a rook to b7. I think black would love to try and get a rook to b7, but it's not that easy. That knight would be too strong on c4. Instead, black plays a6, and we do have a3 kicking the queen, and now knight f5, looking at winning e7 now with knight takes e7. Then we got knight check as well after that, which would be unfortunate for black. So black defends humbly e7, and now we get this aggressive looking e5. The threat here, well, there seems to be numerous actually. e6 seems a bit squishy. Where is the rook going? Also, we can just double up rooks. It seems as though white's got a very powerful position. If d takes, this wasn't played, b takes was played, but if d takes here, it seems d6 is a very powerful forcing move. So we can't take, which would be losing the rook. If the knight moves somewhere, I don't know, a8, there's knight takes e7, looking at knight c6 check next. That's horrible, horrible. So that's not possible really to take. It's liberating this d6. It's not possible. Black played b takes c4 here, and actually in this position white doubles rooks, threatening to simply just win that bishop. Now the bishop hasn't got any squares here. Black plays knight b5, and white could actually just take the bishop off. Nakamura instead played, I mean that's winning, a4, and black resigned here. He's losing material. Black's attack didn't seem to get started here in this final position, so black resigned at move 30. In this final position, if knight d4, we just take that off and then take the bishop, and we were threatening rook takes e8. It's a disaster. There's no attack. We can just take this after. There's no attack for black. Black's just smashed. Yeah. So actually, I think Gupta at least had a scary looking position at some point. But unfortunately for David Anton Gajera, I don't think he had even a scary looking position. I don't think there's any prizes for getting scary looking positions, but you know, it's a result. It's still a loss in both cases for black. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think the other game was better for black, the prospects? At least in some of the variations black was winning in the other game. It seems more bleak, the variations here, for black. So something went severely wrong, but I think a point to get about this game, now let's keep the final position, a point to get about this game, I think, is that it seems intuitively to me, when you see in a grandmaster a game a move like bishop takes f6, giving up the dark square bishop, it seems that if that's consistently followed up, it seems it's often with you know, light square pressure. And here, you know, white's light square pressure did seem to be huge after that. Black had this fractured pawn structure in particular. It wasn't just the weaknesses of the h7 pawn, it was the weakness in front of it that the variations were echoing. You know, rook coming to h6 in some of the lines. So the rook's doubling here against that poor bishop, yeah. If black tries like to defend, by the way, let's see, if black tried to defend this, there's knight takes e7, that's a key point, threatening knight c6 check. So if rook takes e7, we're just like losing the exchange. So black's in a bind here. Yeah, it's difficult to defend that bishop. Horrible, miserable position. But this, I mean, when you're playing against Nakamura, you know, I mean, I guess that's what you're going to expect to be walloped, because he's like nearly like 2800, whatever. So, okay, so let's have a look at another game. I hope you got something from that. Did anyone get anything from this game? I don't know. It seems as it was a little bit more one-sided than the other game I showed you. So Nakamura scores heavily with white at Gibraltar, actually. I think, as you'd expect, he's beaten in Gibraltar 2 Dutch defences with this game. Another win was Queen's Gambit declined. And he had another win in the Neo Greenfield defence, which was seen against Gupta. He also won with black twice, though, as well. I don't want to show you the Reti game, it was a bit drawn out, long and drawn out. He also won with black in a Nimzo Indian. So he ended up sharing first with 8 out of 10 points with Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And to keep balance with MVL, let's have a look at an MVL game now, which we haven't seen last week. So we're making this a kind of part 2 of the Predators, how they savaged the other GMs in some cases. So the game that I wanted to show you with MVL, one was an interesting Sicilian game which I tried to get my head around. I played this a few times. Actually not that one. It's going to load up a Sicilian game. No, there was another one. Yeah, this one. Okay, let me get this. So this was in round 10. His MVL's opponent playing white, let's flip the board, was Sebastien Mays. So Sebastien Mays, or Maza, I don't know, could be Maza, is a French grandmaster, 32 years old. He became a grandmaster in 2007, actually. He finished second at the International Open in Calvia in 2005 and shared second at the Reykjavik Open in 2012. So MVL's opponent, yeah, pretty good. So we see e4, and we see Sicilian defense. So let me see, knight f3, d6, bishop b5 check. So this is the Moscow variation, Sicilian Moscow variation, early bishop b5 check. We see knight bd7, white opens the center, d4. There's quite a lot of games here in Livebook with either c takes or knight gf6, actually. We see c takes, queen takes, a6, white takes on d7. This is well-trodden territory so far. So it seems white has, you know, volunteered the light square bishop in this line. Rarely is white setting up a Roxy bind here, actually. Only 17 games. More popular is bishop g5. Here, knight c3 is played. And then we have e5, which seems to weaken d5 a little bit at least. Queen d3. h6. So to stop white from the classic exchange on f6 to weaken d5 even more. So a4 a4 is the main move here apparently. 45 games. We see knight d2. This is, I think, also quite popular, as though white is interested in rerouting the knight to that d5 square. We see rook c8, knight c4, bishop e6. White is threatening knight takes d6 check here, so black protects d6 and hits the knight. The knight goes back. So it seems as though white's maneuvers are all very logical around the d5 square. Sorry, what am I doing? This is just the line. This is engine line. This is just an engine line. I've gone into a variation. Pardon me. Let's rewind. We had e5, the queen dropping back, h6. We did have this in the game, knight d2, as if this is the maneuver. No. Black didn't play rook c8, pardon me. Black played b5, stopping this maneuver. This is the intention maneuver. No, it was stopped in the game. Let's get back to reality. It was stopped with b5. Okay, so a3, yeah, bishop e7, rook d1. White still has pressure on d5. Bishop g4, which tempts white to weaken the dark squares a bit. f3, we see this check, king h1, bishop drops back. But now we do get a rerouting maneuver around d5 like this. Knight f1, knight e3. So again, we get a similar position to the variation I just showed you by accident. So the knights are looking at d5. Rook ac8, queen e2. Black contests d5 a bit more with rook c5. And is comfortably doubling rooks on that c file. It seems black has piece pressure here, significant piece pressure. Queen b7. We see rook d2. White is gonna, it seems, double to make sure that bind on d5 is reinforced as much as possible. But now a5 with b4 coming. Okay, so question here, if white just doubles rooks, then b4 tends to be good for black, it seems. This position, black could just take, come back here with a good position. Things like bishop b5 and bishop g5 are nice for black. So a5, it seems, against rook d1, you know, we're just going to play b4 here and seal up that hole. Just absolutely make sure that hole's sealed here. This is a strategic concern. Let's just have a look at that again. Can white actually put a piece in the hole on d5? If rook takes d5, this is the problem. C pawn falls without too much compensation. We can either take, we can take here. There's not compensation here. Black's even going to double. Yeah, a piece can't be held on d5 in this position. Alright, so just absolutely rule out rook ad1. White plays bishop f2 instead, looking at the rook. So looking at knight f5 instead. Black plays b4 anyway. And we've got this question again. Can we just plonk a knight on d5? White actually played knight a4 here. If knight d5, bishop takes, knight takes. This is curious in this position. Black has a resource here. If you were playing black in this position, black has a resource here. Black to play here. This is just a variation. I was wanting to show about the d5 square. What can black play in this position? Any ideas? What would you play with black in this position? This didn't happen in the game. We see more awkward looking play from white because of the brutality of forcing moves, basically. This cannot happen in the game. Why? What does black do here? It's simple. Black plays knight takes d5 when you see it. He's got time for this, because if takes, we throw in knight f4, hitting the queen, winning material. We're going to be winning this after. And if that's really the case, that bishop takes c5 is impossible, then this is horrible. We're just dropping d5. If queen e4 here, there's rook b5, getting out of the pin. Black's better. So we see the more awkward looking, quirky looking, instead knight a4. Yeah, knight on the rim is dim. So it looks as though black has successfully made sure this position isn't so simple at all with the d5 square. The bishop, the rook drops back. White does actually occupy the d5 square now, knight d5. But with this knight on a4, it's not such an amazing thing. In fact, black doesn't have to even take on d5. He actually played what seems to be a stronger move, bishop d8. If he takes on d5 here, this position will end up being good for white, potentially. White can actually play like this, it seems. Things like this. No, maybe rook a4. And that justifies things. But black is not obliged to take on d5. After all those variations, which echoing about the d5 battles, black can actually play what he did, bishop d8. He leaves that knight on d5. And black is threatening now things like b3 to just blast through that c file. It's not all about the d5 square, it's about this c file at the moment. We have these rooks doubled. Okay, b3 does seem to be on the cards, because also this awkwardness of the knight. I mean, just to show that, say this, we've got things like rook c4 and this knight's being executed. The bishop's covering b6, that's the key point. Bishop's covering b6, this knight's being humiliated. So white's here, yeah, covering b6 against this knight. White played b3. Black now played b takes a3. And it's really quite dangerous, this position, for white because of that c file. White tries to reinforce d5 here. If he plays like rook takes a3, then this is going to be good for black. This position, bishop takes d5, seems possible. Rook takes c2, hitting the queen and the rook. This is all very tactical. But it seems as though black's getting a big advantage. This is hairy stuff. But black gets the advantage here. Yeah. Things like queen b4 coming. So white tries to reinforce actually d5 here instead of taking the pawn. Plays queen d1. So this slow recapture of the pawn does help to get control, try and keep control of MVL's very dangerous dynamic possibilities. And it seems black cannot do anything spectacular here in regard to d5 finally. Black ends up playing rook a6. So white is able to take now safely on a3. So it seems white now has at least not had a major disaster yet, but he does have this knight on the rim, which doesn't seem to be doing much. It's here now. Knight takes d5. This central square has news. So knight takes, e takes, bishop f5. Black is now threatening, in fact, bishop g5 to win c2 if that rook moves. It's defending c2 at the moment, so the c pawn moves in advance. We have bishop g5. The rook goes to a2, as though white's interested in ganging up on a5 in the future. Maybe. But now the knight and the rook seem a little bit awkward in some respects. Black breaks through the center in this position, e4. One has got a chance, while knight c3 is not stopping e4. Black breaks the center, f takes, bishop takes. We have knight c3, the bishop drops back. Knight b5. And the bishop drops back again to attack here, threatening this. Knight goes back. And black takes that center file. So not too worried about his a pawn here. He's taking this center file, and this looks a little bit dangerous again. White really is in no position to take this pawn on a5. If he takes the pawn on a5, isn't b3 going to drop or something horrible? Let's have a quick look. Not so horrible. It's okay. Queen b4 apparently. No, this is horrible after queen b4. We've got something like bishop e3. This position can be horrible for white. Yeah, so okay. So white's not in a rush anyway to take on a5. He plays h3. But black has got active pieces. Queen b4. It's attacking the knight. The knight's defended. And now invasive move bishop e3. So threatening to take in and take here. Dark square pressure. Knight d1. We have bishop c5, which is blockading white's pawn majority, because white does actually have a 3-2 pawn majority here. It's a nice blockade square. c5. King h2. Now, very interesting move is played in this position at move 37. Black to play here. Very, very interesting dynamic move. So can you guess it? So if you're a dynamic aggressive player, you've got some dark square pressure going on. Your opponent's rooks seem huddled on the queen side here. What would you consider in this position then to play? If I give you 20 seconds. Black to play here. Actually, it doesn't come up as a top engine move, by the way, which is interesting as well. Well, not at the moment, not with this engine. It might do with other engines, I don't know. Just thinking about Fritz, actually. But yeah, black to play here. Any ideas? What does black play here? It's a bit of a surprising move. Anyone got it? Black to play? Any ideas? Okay. Yeah, he plays rook e1, offering an exchange sack. Yeah. This isn't actually taken. If it is taken, queen takes e1, threatening a mating free with bishop g1 check, like this, bishop f2, and then mating on g1. If this position happens, this is bad news, I think, because I'll have to check. Take this one, and black's doing very nicely. Or black has the advantage. Black has control of that e file, and aggressive moves coming up, like queen e1 or f5. But okay, so after rook e1, that's kind of ignored actually. White plays rook a4, offering his own counter exchange sack. So both sides desperate to do an exchange sack. That's taken. Rook takes a4, and it seems, hang on a sec, isn't the queen the one protecting the rook? If the queen moves, then isn't the rook just being snapped off here? This is the intended thing, surely. Surely this was not intended. So guess what happened here in this position? Black to play. This is getting very, very tactical now. Black to play here. This requires a lot of like calculation work, surely, to play like this. Black in this position sacks the queen. Queen sack. Bishop takes f2. So the queen is taken. We have check. We have basically two rooks for the queen here coming up. This position we got two rooks for the queen and the bishop against the knight. Equal on pawns, 5 pawns each. We see queen d2 being played. Rook drops back. Yeah, black's slightly better. He's dropping b4 here as well. Queen takes b4. After rook b6, actually, it seems as though we've reached the end of the game. I assume, because it's move 43, that white didn't necessarily run out of time. I think white resigned. Maybe he just felt he was significantly worse. Let's have a look at this position. If white had played queen c3, black could get his pawn back surely with this move to be equal on pawns again. And actually white's deteriorating quite badly here, it seems. Very badly. White's deteriorating because his king can't go back into a safe haven. What does actually white do in this position without losing immediately? In fact, not much. King makes a run for it away from third rank. This doesn't look too good. Things like rook g3 are now happening. This position looks as though the king has got major issues. So white didn't want to have any of that happen. Yeah, he just resigned after rook b6. In fact, it seems like a, well, from the spectator point of view, unexplained resignation. Would you resign here with white? Does it seem a bit early to resign in this position? Anywhere where the queen moves, if it moves here or here. Oh, what have I just done? Well, there's an immediate check there, and white's best is apparently to give up the queen, because here there's like check. That's devastating. Yeah, So that's sort of out of the question of queen a4. We just double here, and yeah, the king is just too exposed. The bishop's doing a good job of preventing the king get any safety. If we have this position with similar disastrous effect, this position, the bishop and the two rooks are too good. There's things like rook g3 here, or even rook a3. This position here, for example, if we look at rook g3, rook g4, the king's getting hounded and it can't go back into a safe zone. Let's check here, any good? King f8 is mentioned just to stop any, I think it frees up the rook, this sort of thing, because now the rook e8 is also supported as well. This as a sort of picture of unhappiness for white king safety. Rook e8 becomes possible. Yeah, it's just the king's getting completely harassed without any safety. But it seems an interesting point to resign in the game here. But it just seems as though black has got the unstoppable material gain stuff coming up. So white resigned there. It's mentioned on stream queen a3. Okay, so queen a3, we just double up rooks again. Then what? Does anyone want to suggest something here? It's apparently this is +5 according to Fritz for black, +5 this position, because we're threatening rook takes b3 now. Where does the king go? What does the knight do? What does white do about this? Does he move his king? I mean, it doesn't look that helpful. In fact, black doesn't even have to take here because there's queen d6. Black in this position doesn't have to take on b3. Black can play this, protecting d6, still keeping the king from getting safety. Protect d6. Now threatening rook takes b3 even more effectively. If this rook takes b3, we're on g3 now. This is going to be winning. I'll play f5 check, g5 check, rook b3 check. This is, as the examples, nightmare. Yeah. So yeah, queen a3 does have the advantage of keeping a view on d6. I'm glad someone's mentioned it. But it seems here we double and say this move, we just play bishop h2 here. But even this position apparently is good anyway. This one's good for black anyway. Here, rook e8. We've got stuff happening like g6 and f5 now. So say this position, g6. I mean, this looks like a disaster as well. f5 check, or rook d3. Threatening rook e4 check, because the king just hasn't got any safety. It can't be safe there. You're always going to end up winning that knight as well. Yeah, there's loads of ways of skinning the cat here. Okay, so it does seem as though it gets really bleak in this position, so white resigned anyway. So yeah, those are the two winners of the tournaments. So we had a look at 2 games of Nakamura and 1 game of MVL here. So I hope you got something out of those 3 games in this week's session. Good luck in your chess over the week, etc. Okay, thanks for coming. Comments or questions on YouTube, and please remember to, if you want, just like the video. Any likes on the video appreciated here. So yeah, thanks very much. Likes are appreciated. See you next week.